Throughout the years, artists have been painting with motives of influence. Their commentaries took their form on the canvas. From pictorial metaphors to blatant religious depictions, these artists attempted to feed their views to their audience under many guises. Their propaganda was the food they fed to their audience's mind.
During the early 18th century, the colonies became increasingly wealthy from extended trade with Britain, and her sampler, Elizabeth Hudson, a Philadelphia Quaker, sought to persuade people to regulate the consumptions of luxuries. On her sampler, she composed a poem that warned against the vanity of rich attire. By taking inspiration from the book of Genesis, it's hard to dispute such a view and receive support for doing so.
During the Second Great Awakening, which was a time of religious growth for different denominations in America during the early 19th century, Austin sought to turn his audience's attention towards traditional Christian truth and expand values. In Dolces a Peace, Austin warned Americans against the French Revolution's prideful code of human reason through the metaphor of Daniel pronouncing divine judgment against King Belshazzar during a meal.
Washington Allston sought to portray the truth of divine grandeur through painting Old Testament stories such as Elijah in the desert. In this particular work, he emphasized the whole of an event instead of the star prophet of a given narrative like most religious paintings before him. Here, Elijah's presence is marginalized and barely occupies the canvas, while the complexity of the desert grabs all attention. In this method, he attempted to make divine presence manifest itself in nature rather than in the human. To see God in the landscape is to see God in the domestic landscape, America. Such art helped promote ideas such as manifest destiny, and America being the modern-day promised land.
Thomas Cole, another artist during the Second Great Awakening, painted a panoramic scene from Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts in the Oxbow. In the hill above the Oxbow, Cole inscribes the words Noah and Shaddai to feed the idea that triggers associations between nature and God. He worried that the advance of civilization westward would obliterate what made the wilderness morally distinctive. By seemingly juxtaposing both the tame pastoral with the dark and the wild, he seeks to actually emphasize that they are one.
Lily Spencer's Shake Hands tried to feed us the idea of separate spheres of ideology, men working in the real world and women staying home. Women did not have access to education and had limited powers and rights during the 1850s because the society expected women to stay pious and devote themselves to family.
In the painting by Joseph Blackburn, Isaac Winslow and his family represent fertility. Fertility is a natural capability of giving life. Isaac was a very successful merchant. In the painting, Isaac directs our attention to the other family members as he points towards his wife's lap and baby Hannah. The parallel lines formed by the arms of Lucy and the baby leads to the older daughter, named after her mother, presenting to them an apron full of fruit. This painting emphasizes the propagation of domestic virtues. Lucy, the daughter, is preparing herself for the duties of motherhood. Also, Lucy expresses familial hopes for the fertility of present and future wives and mothers.
Sea Captains Cruising in Suriname by John Greenwood also propagandizes the view of anti-overconsumption. Here, a group of Rhode Island mariners are shown consuming rum and food with reckless abandon. He depicted colonial officials to transmit the idea that not even members of government should participate in overconsumption. He stressed the pervasive nature of overconsumption by depicting even himself vomiting from too much rum, which shows that even an advocate for self-denial can still fall prey to destructive behavior.
George Caleb Baham's Shooting for the Beef depicts men engaged in a shooting competition. He intended for his audience to buy into the belief that white man was divinely appointed to expand westward, as they are symbolizing prosperity.
Lily?
Rarely limited to paintings, religious guise was employed in architecture. The original Pennsylvania station in New York was the world's largest railroad station when it was built in 1905 to 1910. Its style was similar to Roman architecture, which the nation has widely deemed as a fine standard upon which to determine what is aesthetically pleasant. Its heavy allusions to Roman temples triggered associations between the modernity of trains and things we place our faith in. It's almost holy. Instead of promoting values and social ideology, modern artists used art to promote a new style of painting. Influenced by Picasso and Stieglitz, Max Weber developed a style of interpreting planes of cubism to the dynamic abstract geometry of the urban landscape captured by modernists. He is feeding us the idea that New York's identity as the American city is not limited to only being portrayed through accurate depictions of buildings and activities. but that it can exist in the abstract, that cubism is an art form that can capture its subject's essence. Promoting ideas from religious morals to social ideology of subordination of women, various subjects and ideas took form on canvases and steel. Some of the artworks clearly delivered the attempted ideas to the audience, and some of them required further thinking to understand the attempted message from the artist. Nonetheless, the motives of influence and ideas that the artists have been feeding the audience allow their audience's mind, in their eyes, to stay healthy and sustained with nutritious information.